show. Now we are moving on. We're going west. We're going to the town of Blue Mountains and the 3 mayoral candidates who are running. Unfortunately, Joe Hallows could not be here today. So we will be talking with Elizabeth Marshall first, then Tony Poole, and then Andrea Matrosovs. So welcome, Elizabeth.
Well, thank you for having me.
Hey, it's wonderful. Now, tell me, just before we came on, I said, what exactly is it that you do? And perhaps you could share that with the viewing audience.
Well, I have my own business. I'm president of All Rights Research. But I've taken a leave of absence from that because that business is doing legal, legislative, and historical research for MPs, MPPs, lawyers, and so on.
Okay.
But I'm also the chairperson for the Canadian Justice Review Board.
Okay.
And
which is something I've never heard of.
And it's a
I
very...
might have to have you back.
It's a very substantial board.
Okay.
And so over the last 2 years, there have been a number of bills brought forward in the House of Commons that we've gone forward with, making comment. There's also Senate bills that we've made comment on.
So this is a not-for-profit?
This is a non-profit organization, and we have substantial people on the board. Al Rosen is on it. Senator Ann Cools, she was on it. We have retired Justice Wallace Craig, and so on and so on and so on.
A good legal resume and legislative resume.
Yes.
Interesting. So is that one of your things that has perked your interest in politics?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
I've read every municipal act ever made in this country. Well, actually, from Upper Canada.
You should be well versed.
Yes,
okay.
1848.
Okay.
So I've read those. I've read the legislation. I've read the Planning Act. I've read the Building Code. I've read the Conservation Authorities Act. You name it, I've read it.
You've read it. Okay. Interesting.
Yes, I've even read the Property and Civil Rights Act for the province of Ontario.
Okay.
It's one paragraph.
It's one paragraph. So this is interesting. This is going to bring a lot of skills to the job should you be elected mayor.
Yes, and that's what I've been asked to bring.
And a lot of training you don't have to do.
That's correct.
Okay, so tell me, why run for mayor now?
Actually, it's because I was asked.
Okay.
I was asked by a number of people. They feel there is a huge disconnect between the government, the council, and the residents.
Okay.
And it's a huge lack of communication.
It's also a huge municipality.
Geographically, yes, it is.
Geographically, and variety of different communities that are strung together to make the town of Blue Mountains.
Yes, and that's another issue is, so with the official plan, it's coming up for review.
Yes.
Now, this council has technically passed it in principle, but they've only had one public meeting, from what I understand.
Okay.
So there needs to be more input from the residents in regards to this. Sure, you can have committees and committees and committees, but if you aren't listening to the residents
and what they want
and
or what they think.
expanding,
yeah,
because look at our economic development.
Yeah,
we have tourism and agriculture. We need diversification in our economy. So what I'm looking for, and I'm been asked to bring this to council by residents.
Okay.
This is the thing, that we need a business park.
Okay.
We need to tap into Grey County's economic development.
Okay.
Because this is the thing, our young people have no horizon, no goals.
Yeah.
And we need that. And then that in turn brings in good paying jobs.
Yep.
And from there, then with the interest rates going up for housing, housing prices have come down, and they are coming down.
Yeah.
So there will be housing and well-paying jobs.
Yeah. Okay.
And this is, I think, one of the largest issues that people have brought to me is their kids can't stay, learn, grow, and prosper in the community.
In the community they grew up in.
Yeah.
So tell me, you mentioned housing becoming affordable.
Yes.
The current council of the town of Blue Mountains bought a piece of property and talked about affordable/attainable housing. Is that possible? Is that the role of the municipality? I know Collingwood's looking at it as well as a challenge.
Well, first off, legislatively and regulatory, there is no such thing as attainable housing.
Oh, okay.
It's
just a nicer word than affordable?
no, actually, affordable housing has real criteria, and
Okay.
that's found in the Municipal Act,
Okay.
the Planning Act, the Ontario Planning and Development Act, the Housing Development Act, and a number of different regulations.
Okay.
And so, and their purpose may be laudable,
Yeah.
but on the other hand, the municipalities have to follow the rules.
Yes. And I think for
And-
some new councillors
Yes.
and mayors and deputy mayors, the biggest challenge is the learning curve.
It is, and face it, okay, the Municipal Act is 482 pages,
Yeah.
plus or minus. But there
Of
is...
gobbledygook.
Well, no, actually it's not. But there is a municipal counselor's guide done by the ministry.
Yes.
That should be the go-to
Yeah.
for any candidate.
Okay. For training
And-
and getting familiarized.
Well, yes, and on top of that, there are things in there that even legal counsel are unaware of.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And we are not to ask staff for legal advice,
True, because they're not lawyers.
but we are supposed to know and understand that document as
Yeah.
well as the Planning Act and the Building Code, the main ones that actually affect municipal council.
Right. Okay.
But the other main one is also the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act.
Yes.
And that's where
We always
I
hear
stand.
a lot about that one.
Well, I stand in the principle.
Yeah.
And so I have not affiliated with any of the special interest groups.
Okay.
I have not done any of their questionnaires or their
Okay.
surveys based on that principle of
Okay.
impartiality and integrity, withstanding the deepest scrutiny.
So now if I go to one of my favorite questions, what skills do you have to lead the council? I think you just told me a few of them.
Well, and the other thing too is I found when I ran in 2018 provincially
Yeah.
that a good idea is a good idea.
Okay.
And I want those good ideas to come to the table.
Yeah.
And if they are lawful,
Yeah.
and if they are reasonable, aren't going to be too onerous or egregious on the taxpayer, then this is something we need to look at and the viability of it.
Okay. Do you have a for instance? Something that could be done? That's really putting you on the spot, isn't it?
Yeah, because there's so many.
Okay, well let's pick
A
one.
trade school.
A trade school, okay.
I've had people ask me if we can have a trade school,
Okay.
like
That's a good idea.
be in communication with the province. The province is looking for areas to have trade schools.
Okay.
Look to a community college.
Right. Which we
To-
do have Georgian in the area.
Yes, it's close
Yeah,
by.
yeah.
But then on the other hand, then you have the apprenticeships, and you can then build businesses based on those apprenticeships. And so that's where I've been asked to go.
So that's sort of like council taking a leadership role to say we need this type of
Yeah.
education in our community.
And then you go from there and you
Okay.
communicate with the provincial government.
Right.
And
You build those bridges and start
I just
working on it.
I just look at the nursing course in
Yes.
Owen Sound
Yeah. Yeah.
because the idea came forward. My idea. It came forward during the 2018 election.
Okay.
That was part of my platform, and I brought that forward. And I was very, very happy because it didn't matter that it was my idea.
No.
What mattered was that it was moved forward because it was just a good idea.
A good idea. And I think that's one of the things that is challenging because I know we still have a lot of young families in the area, but they don't have the good jobs.
Well, and not
And they may not know where to go
Yeah.
to get the training.
And I don't want to take anything away from Georgian College, but I've looked into the courses here in Collingwood.
Yeah.
And you can't fully complete a lot of the courses that are here.
Yeah. True. True.
So
Yeah, you start
we,
and then
we
you're-
need to have a full completed course and
Within
have
one
that run through.
one of the colleges. Okay.
Yeah, no, and there are courses I know in Owen Sound,
Mm-hmm.
but Owen Sound is a substantial, like it's an hour and a half away.
Yeah.
So in wintertime,
It's that can be a challenge in itself.
yeah, so
Interesting.
yeah.
Because I mean, the other thing that's an explosion here is the building industry.
That is the other thing. And not only that, though, with a trade school,
Yeah.
it's also going to be supportive of the tourism industry because they need it,
Yes.
and the agricultural industry. Like, that's our two main economic drivers in the town of the Blue Mountains,
Interesting.
is tourism and agriculture.
Right.
And I do know that our agriculture is one of the best.
In the entire province.
And so that's why I would like to tap into a trade school as well as tap into Grey County's economic development and get it growing.
But it's interesting. I know of several farmers who might be the last generation on the farm because their kids aren't interested.
Well, and I think that's because they're looking at it as it's a thankless task.
Yes.
Like, people don't understand. Farmers
What farming is.
They're the most innovative, intelligent people you can meet.
Adaptable.
Yeah, because they have to understand world markets. They have to understand the weather. They have to be able to weld, be mechanics.
Yeah.
Like, they have to understand crops.
Yeah.
Like, there is a number of things, and to be honest, I would like to call them agricultural businesses.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that people understand that they are a huge part of an economy, and they are one of the drivers of economy.
Well, where does our food come from? Where does our dairy come from? All of those sorts of things. So are you for protecting the agricultural lands? As we also have 1 million developers who have discovered this area.
I know, and this is the big thing with developers. Developers would prefer to buy farmland because normally it's all been cleared and there's drainage.
Okay.
So that makes it the creme de la creme for developers.
They don't have to
But
do
then on
as
the
much
other
work.
hand,
Okay.
specialty cropland is very rare.
Yes.
And we have a number of areas in the town of the Blue Mountains that have specialty cropland. And so the agricultural community has asked that that be protected.
Yeah.
So,
Which seems logical.
and so they have come to me and they have asked for that.
Okay.
So that's where I would go to,
Interesting.
like in our official plan. And yet we have other areas that would be wonderful for a business park. You know, we need offices.
Yeah.
If we want to attract medical teams, if we want to attract optometrists, that type of professional, lawyers, accountants, we need office space.
Yeah.
And again, that's been brought to me.
Interesting. Okay.
So, and
You know a lot of the needs.
well,
They've
the
been
other thing-
identified.
The other thing too is it doesn't have to be invasive, and it doesn't have to be just in Thornbury or along Highway 26.
No.
We have a number of hamlets.
I was going to say there's enough in those two areas already.
So why are we not looking to our other hamlets?
Yeah.
Like, we've got Ravenna, we've got Banks, we've got Heathcote, we've got Duncan, we've got all of these other tiny little hamlets that could be the saving grace.
Yeah.
But it seems like every official plan doesn't necessarily include those areas. It's mainly in the development area. And then when I found out that in the past official plans that the main development was to be right in the core of Thornbury, people are very upset about this.
Well, Thornbury is much like Collingwood. It's changing. And what has brought a lot of people to the area is the charm and the personality of the village of Thornbury or the town of Thornbury. The same with Collingwood, but it's changing.
It is changing, but I don't want to lose that neighborly feel.
That small town charm, that's what I call it.
And so what I'm looking at is if we open up the communications,
Yes.
then that can remain. Like, then you can phone town hall and actually talk to someone and not get voicemail.
Yeah.
So
Wouldn't that be lovely?
wouldn't that be?
Wouldn't that be lovely? It's interesting. So what sort of priorities do you have for, say, your first 100 days?
First 100 days, to amend at the request of the residents, to amend the procedural bylaw.
Okay.
All of our meetings are during daytime hours, including
Yes.
public meetings.
Yes, okay.
And so they would like that changed to 7 o'clock at night because they want to be able to attend.
Okay. The working
want-
people.
Yes, because they have to take time off work.
Yes.
And so, and then I had a lot of people come to me and say, well, you know, you're going to have to pay overtime, which is very expensive. Well, staff can have the next morning off.
Yeah. Yeah. Which, honestly, is a discussion that's happened here in Collingwood, too, and around the whole area, because People can't come to meetings
No, and
every
and-
single day.
And yet, they are the people that we are supposed to be listening to
Yeah. And representing.
And representing. So
Interesting.
that's the other thing as well is the code of conduct.
Okay.
I read Justice Morocco's
Yep.
ruling,
Yes.
and I read it with open mind and open eyes. And I feel that there are specific things in that ruling that municipalities should be looking at
True.
and very seriously looking at.
Well, good practice is good practice.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
ethics are
Yeah.
ethics.
And a code of conduct, to me, I've always felt should be a living document.
Well, and we had a code of conduct committee, and they didn't meet in 2021.
I think COVID mixed a lot of things.
I
up.
think so as well.
But it's time
other
to get back
committees
in the
did.
saddle. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, okay.
and that's my concerns is I don't feel that people are taking that code of conduct serious enough. And I also feel that there may be things that need to be added to it.
Okay.
So
Again,
that's
a living document.
yes.
Okay.
So those are the two
Major. Yeah.
things.
Got to warn you, we've only got a minute left in our discussion.
Well, all I can say is I stand in the law. I represent the law.
I just want to say I'd love to give you the whole minute just to say why you want to be mayor of the town of Blue Mountains.
And I don't necessarily really want to be mayor. I have been
Asked to be mayor. Okay.
to be mayor, and I'm hoping that people understand that when you bring the law into it, then you bring the impartiality, and you
okay.
open the doors, and you can open the minds, and you can open communication venues.
Okay.
And that's the way it needs to be. That's why I want flyers sent out.
So, I can't remember, is the town of Blue Mountains a full-time mayor? No.
Yes.
Full-time mayor.
Well, it's
Or the
been
job
made that
ends up being-
position.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And it's the same with the council.
Okay. And then that throws in county as well if you're the mayor.
Yeah. Well, there are elections,
There are,
depends on
okay.
what council says.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
but I've worked with a lot of the
Okay.
mayors in Grey
And
County.
the minute's up.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Thanks for joining me, Elizabeth.
Well, thank you for having
Join
me.
us when we come back after this break, and I will be talking with Tony Poole.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
It was my daughter's birthday. She was blowing out the candles on our cake when we heard coming from the TV. So we stopped and listened, and it helped us get to safety. That's why when I think of my daughter's birthday, because now she gets to keep having them.
Welcome back. Thank you to Elizabeth Marshall for joining us in the first segment, and now it's my pleasure to welcome Tony Poole, who is also a candidate for the mayor of the town of Blue Mountains. Welcome, Tony.
Well, thank you, Penny. It's
Thank-
great to be here.
As I say, this is a good chance to sit and let the person sitting at home on the sofa watching the show or watching it on their computer, because it's also available online, to say, why am I going to vote for that guy? Because I don't even know his name. So let's open up. You're running
Sure.
for mayor. Why not go for the top job?
Listen, I'm running for mayor.
Yes. Okay.
I've been engaged with the town of Blue Mountains in terms of council for about 8 years.
Okay.
I was on the Economic Development Committee.
Okay.
I was also on the Mayor's Task Force for COVID-19
Okay.
recovery. And I was vice chair of the BIA.
Okay.
and I was president in the Chamber of Commerce. Okay. So in the last 4 or 5 years, I've probably been to 50, 60 meetings.
So living at town hall.
So let's just say I have a very good understanding of the inner workings of council. Okay. I think that I have a vested interest in the community. My wife has a business in town.
How long have you lived in the town of Blue Mountains?
So about 22 years in total.
In total, okay.
Weekenders for basically about 15 of those years, and full-time in the last, for me, 7.
Yeah, okay. And those have been 7 action-packed years from the number of committees you've been on.
Oh, let me tell you, it's been very, very involving, and I believe in getting engaged. My working career, I spent 40 years in the insurance business. Okay. I was the president and CEO of an insurance company. Okay. And in particular, I spent the better part of the last 5 years of my career president for North America. So I really do understand what it is to be engaged, to work with a team, to have regional differences.
And to have communication skills.
Absolutely. When you're talking about running an insurance company, I had probably 7,000 employees. Yes. So you've got to be able to communicate. Yep. You've got to be able to listen. Yep. You've got to be engaging. Yep. One of the things I learned is that no one person has the perfect idea.
That's fair.
What you have sometimes are instances of unique ideas that you can take, and you take something else from somebody else and it builds on it. And before you know it, if you are listening and if you're fully engaged and you respect the other people, you can actually end up with something much better than what you originally thought you were going to get.
Well, I don't think anybody has ever presented the perfect idea.
No. Well,
they think at the time they are.
Sure.
But as you say, if your ears are open, you can say if we tweaked it this way and if we added this or we removed this.
Yeah, because sometimes we just don't consider all the different, avenues, or sometimes we don't consider all of the hurdles to implementation. Okay. And sometimes when you are open to listening, you can actually be better and more successful because you've included that in terms of the game plan, right?
Okay. Interesting. So those are some of the skills you're going to bring into the job as if elected as the new mayor of the town of Blue Mountains.
Right.
Interesting. Okay. So what do you see as the top 3 priorities, or as I always say, the first 100 days, the way all the big politicians do, in my first 100 days?
Top 3 priorities. Number 1, it has to be attainable housing.
Okay.
I think that we've spent the last 4 years of talking about putting something in place. Yeah. There's no shovels in the ground.
No. There is ground, though.
There is ground.
Yes.
There is ground. Yeah. But we're still a bit off in terms of implementation because we have a request for proposal out there. Okay. And I think we need to see that in terms of what makes sense. Okay. The key to all of this is finding the right partner who can come in. Yep. Make sure it addresses the needs of the community. Okay. And let's make sure that it's viable financially. And by that I mean, is it going to work in allowing the rents to be reasonably priced? Yep. Are the construction costs going to work based on the number of units you have?
Depending on, right? In today's age.
And let me be clear, I don't want to envision a project where the taxpayers of the community of the town of Blue Mountain continue to invest in this. I think that...
They're not on the hook.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. I think we need to find the right partner that makes it work, and if it's viable, great. Let's implement it, put it in. If it's not, then let's look for an option that is viable, and that may well be with another partner.
Okay, interesting. Okay. That, when I sort of did my little basic research, that's the Gateway project.
That's correct.
As it's on the town website. Now there's also the Campus of Care, which I think is a fascinating concept.
It is, and I have a personal vested interest. Okay. Because my mother-in-law lived with us for 15 years. Okay. And she passed away recently, and she was in a nursing home in Thornbury.
Okay.
Very, very good.
Yep.
They looked after her.
Yep.
But I think, there were a lot of issues. Staffing, as we all understand with
Yes.
COVID, has
Yep.
certainly taken its toll. But I think we need a more modern facility, something that is expanded in terms of the number of units, and something that has perhaps more modern rehabilitation or skill sets that people can help them in having a better quality of life.
I do know in Collingwood the current council have had a presentation on an MZO for a very similar, I would say, campus of care as well.
Right.
On the Poplar Side Road, where the new hospital may go when the government makes up its mind, the new G&M hospital. But it's fascinating because some of it is progressive, some of it is types of housing that are geared to the types of clients who will move into it.
Right.
Which to me always says I don't understand why developers don't build bungalows, because they'd have a lot of sales.
It's true,
I really don't.
Yeah. And, and typically when we look at a campus of care, we're thinking from a demographic standpoint, we tend to think of older people,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
Or people who have perhaps health concerns that are disabling.
Yeah.
But there are younger people that require assistance
Yes.
in their lifestyle. And so that's a concern to families in our community, because we really, at this point, don't have any kind of facility that allows these younger people to come in. So it's not just about whether or not we have a facility for perhaps the post-retirement,
Yeah.
or people that have limitations in terms of their abilities, but it's also people who have assisted living needs.
Yes.
And I think that that's a big part of that. And then I think beyond that, too, is making sure that we can draw in and attract those health professionals, whether it would be nursing, whether it be...
You always want to say if you build it, they will come, but they have to come.
Yeah. And then in turn, you've got to have some reasonable, affordable housing to make it attractive for them to stay.
Yeah.
So I think it's all coupled with that. I think that they're both, very important.
Yes. Would you have a third priority for the new council?
Absolutely. I think the third and most important part to me is making sure that we have infrastructure that supports the official plan. That is to say, make sure that our water and sewage treatment is at the point where it can sustain reasonable growth going forward, and that we don't wake up one day and discover that we have a problem.
Like Collingwood did?
Let's just say there are other communities that have,
This is my home. This is my home. We've gone through it in the last couple of years, where all of a sudden it was wow. It was a full halt to begin with.
So it's a good example.
And
I think
it's a good lesson too.
Absolutely. And there are neighbors, and we kind of looked at that and we said, let's not fall into that same kind of problem. Let's learn from our neighbors and say, what can we do, and start working. And if someone says we're okay for the next 3 to 4 years, that's fine, but it may take us 3 to 4 or 5 years to build the infrastructure.
I'm so happy to hear you say that, because that's exactly what happened to Collingwood. A report happened to the current council of the day in 2015, who put it aside politely.
Right.
If they had started to act and implement it even incrementally, 2021 and 2022 wouldn't have happened.
Right.
So, and the other thing I'm fascinated by, the more I watch municipal councils, and I watch all 4 in this area, is the snail's pace at which often they work.
It's absolutely true. And I witnessed this for the better part of the last 4 years. And it puzzled me to a degree, like everybody else. Why does it take so long? And part of the process that I think is contributing to this is that I witnessed time and time again, council would put off a decision and they would ask for a report.
Yes.
And so every time that you ask for a report about something, 1, it postpones it.
Yeah.
2, is costly, because behind producing that report,
staff time.
It's staff time.
Or consultants.
Right, and then whatever staff time might be engaged in something else is drawn into this.
Yeah.
And to your point, absolutely, then there's additional costs.
Yeah.
So I think we have to be mindful that there are times when it's reasonable to ask for something.
Yeah.
But a good example is that Castlegate is a project that's talked a lot about in our community, and a lot of people don't know much about it.
It's a great big project.
Exactly, and it's been on the books
Yeah.
for 50 years,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And so it came up, and council requested that the planning department produce
Yeah.
a report. Well, truth be known, that that project is in the official plan. In fact, the official plan's about 340 pages.
So it's already there.
It's already there, and it's about 60 pages. So it's a fairly detailed report
Okay.
that is there. And so what I'm saying is sometimes the information is there. We needlessly request additional reports.
Right. Okay.
It might have been easier to take that as a basis to get the background and history. Perhaps some of the council members didn't have it.
Yeah.
So my point is really that sometimes you need that kind of report, and other times we might be better served going at it differently.
So with Castlegate, which is sort of the property that used to be known as Castle Glen,
Yes.
is a very big project. And I mean, it's been on the books, as you say, for 50 years.
Yes.
At what point, is there any expiry date on some of this stuff if it's not gone ahead?
Well, that's one of the things that I put in my platform that I think we need to address, which is to consider, having these clauses that the vision that was set forward in 1971 for Castle Glen as a project is certainly not a vision that rolled forward 50 years, that the community sees the necessary part of that. That's way before the village existed, as an example. So when you look at that, it's very clear that it's not in our best interest to necessarily live with something that was envisioned in 1971. There are things about our community today. So what I'm really talking about there is making sure that we put a clause in place that perhaps after 10 years, certainly, that we have to revisit it, or it gets...
or it goes through another form of a secondary
right, or
approval
gets dropped
process.
off completely.
To stay on the books or to...
Right,
fall off.
because I think that there's been instances in terms of projects that have occurred for us as the town when we ended up getting additional gas stations, and that was because the property that was originally approved some time ago the project lay dormant. Somebody new comes in that wants to implement it, and the next thing you know, the other one comes back. So there's just a prime example sometimes where you have projects that because of circumstance, and maybe it would have been better to drop it off after 5 to 10 years.
Interesting. You have a challenge as mayor. Your municipality is very large.
Yes.
And very, I'm going to say, diverse.
It is very diverse.
You have hamlets, you have little villages. I can't remember, it's either 17 or 23 little towns became the town of Blue Mountains.
Well, yes. When the town of Blue Mountains was formed, it actually was Collingwood Township. Was one component, and then there was Thornbury, and then Clarksburg, right? And then, of course, you had Craigleaf. So all of those at one, or Ravenna, all of those communities at one time had their own identity. So there is a uniqueness to that, but it's not foreign to us. I mean, certainly Canada as a country is made up of a lot of those kinds of issues.
What do you see as the challenges? A lot of outside of Thornbury, Clarksburg, Craigleaf is agricultural.
Yes.
And it's a gem of agriculture between dairy, apples, all sorts of things that...
The richness of our history is the fact that the backbone of what made up the community was agriculture, and continues today. Is a very important part of where.
And they're multi-generational farms too. They've adapted through the years, but they're multi-generational.
And they've introduced new technology in terms of reaping more apples per acre, in terms of how that works. And it's not just the apple industry. We have other fruit.
Yes.
And then the offshoot of that is, look what happened with wine, and grape growing. And then if you look at what's happening with the cideries.
Yes.
So all of a sudden, we're like Niagara-on-the-Lake. We have these,
industries.
Exactly. And then the whole processing and the support businesses that go with that. And then we have tourism.
Yes.
Which is a very important part of the business community. And very clearly, it generates substantial revenue, both from tax revenue and also commerce in terms of the small businesses that are associated with supporting that. And then you've got other businesses that are starting to grow and expand in this community. And one of the things I'd like to see more diversity there. Okay. And one of the things that when we were...
We've got about 45 seconds left in this. So, keep going.
So
I'm happy to give all the time to you.
We have a huge arts community.
Okay.
And so, film industry. One of the things that came up recently is that we are naturally a four-season locale. Yes. We have a lot of history here. Yeah. We have a lot of lush and beautiful scenery, and we've got the water. So we've got ideal locations. Yeah. So one of the areas that we're looking at is, can we expand that as another avenue to drive more business and revenue?
Wow, Tony, that's a pretty high note to leave on. The film industry coming to the town of Blue Mountains. There's a goal for the next council. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
And after the break, we will be back with Andrea Matrosovs.
Hi, I'm Lise McCourt, the president of the RVH Auxiliary. Although we can't be there in person right now, the volunteers, the people that you see in the blue vests, continue to raise funds for RVH. We've been a fundraising force for RVH for over 125 years, having raised $12 million in the past 12 years. The Auxiliary continues this work with our most recent pledge of $5 million. All proceeds go to patient care at RVH. Our jackpot draws will be held monthly with early bird prizes for each draw. In our first jackpot draw, the winner took home over $36,000. The early bird prizes include a combination of cash and gift cards supporting local businesses. The Auxiliary raises funds to help ensure that when our loved ones need care, they have the best available right here in our region. So buy your tickets early and don't miss out on your chance to win.
Do you have something to share? Let everyone know about your next meeting, your need for volunteers, or your fundraising event on the Rogers TV Community Billboard. Send us your words and we'll bring them to life on Rogers TV and rogerstv.com. When it's time to spread the word, go to rogerstv.com to add your announcement to the Community Billboard.
Welcome back. Thank you to Tony for joining us in the last segment, and now we say welcome to Andrea Matrosovs. And Andrea is currently a counselor with the town of Blue Mountains, and she too is seeking the top job. She wants to sit in the mayor's seat come October 24th. Welcome, Andrea.
Thank you very much for having me.
Hey, so why now for mayor, other than Alar said he wasn't running again?
It is because I want to see us continue the progress that we've made in the last 4 years. And, as we came into 2022 and the mayor was making his decision on where we were going, I felt the need to take the risk to step into the leadership position. The safer route might have been to continue on as counselor, but I was really concerned about what direction we might go in.
Right, okay, so interesting. So your deputy mayor has already decided. He was acclaimed.
Correct.
It's interesting. We don't have many acclamations. Clearview had one for mayor and you have one for deputy mayor, so it's kind of interesting. So what makes this the right time for you to run for mayor?
We have worked so hard in the last 4 years of putting some steps and strategies in place. One of the key pieces of my portfolio in the last 4 years was the Integrated Community Sustainability Plan that I co-chaired with Kim Harris, a public member, along with the volunteer committee, and lots of public input on how to craft that plan. In that plan, for example, are 20 bold actions that we will take on economic sustainability, community sustainability, and environmental sustainability.
Okay.
And I am driven to be able to continue those steps. One of the reasons I particularly like that project is because they're accountable and transparent. We can measure them at the end of each year. We can see how far we've come and what we need to do next.
What's next? Over, even if you broke it into the next 4 years of council.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, exactly.
Set them up as goals and
that's right. So
give yourself report cards.
Exactly, yes, and that's exactly what the community needs too, to say, oh, okay, there's a lot of background work that's already gone into progress here. So each of our 20 steps, if you go to our future story on the website, for example, we'll say it's in progress, it's scheduled to start in 2023, or maybe it's a longer term project. But that is what we're doing when we're thinking sustainably. We're not just thinking about today, we're trying to make sure that we're thinking ahead generations beyond us.
Well, I think a lot of municipalities can learn from Collingwood. We have two glaring things that became our water issue was one, planning ahead, and that takes time to be organized for, and our judicial inquiry on what not to do. We have a couple of roadmaps out there for every municipality. So it's kind of interesting. Now, what skills, your mayor's position is, you're going full-time, aren't you?
Yes. So we are, I put in 40 hours a week as a councillor, and I'm already anticipating, should I be given the mandate to run for another, to be on council for another 4 years, where to find the extra 20. Because on top of the normal responsibilities that we have at the council table, we also take on our responsibility to be one of the 2 representatives at our Grey County Council.
Does it have to be your mayor and deputy mayor that go?
Yes, that is actually built into Grey County Council's structure. We do have an alternate so that we can always be 2 voices at the table, but we're only allowed to...
Much the same as, Collingwood has the same for Simcoe County, so it's interesting. So what of, can you give me an example when you mention environmental? What sort of goal might you have for the next 4 years?
Right. So one of the things we're doing, for example, is meeting milestones to make sure that we are going as carbon, as using as little carbon as possible in our municipal practices. So what we do in terms of our transportation, but also in terms of our building. You know, as we progress further and provide more services for our community, it's important that we actually take the lead on being a green developed or green built facilities, for example. The same thing with our fleet. You know, now it wouldn't be economically responsible for us just to turf all of our carbon vehicles and say, let's start fresh with electric, but as we do our transition over the next 4 years, that's the time.
Replacing.
That's right.
Where possible.
Exactly. And there's a good one where, you know, we think about in terms of working with a partnership. So if a partner company comes in and supplies the stations, then we as a municipality can return that back to the taxpayer too by making sure our fleet is making good use of that facility as well.
Interesting. You have 2 big projects on the books in the town of Thornbury, which is within your municipality and the seat of your government. The Campus of Care and the, I think it's called the Gateway Project.
Yes, that's
right. So could you share with the person sitting at home on the sofa what exactly they are and where they're headed?
Right. So, so the Campus of Care is a big community project. It is allocated towards the outer perimeter of the village of Thornbury. But as you've mentioned, that's just one community within our community of communities. I, for one, live in the rural area, the rural neck of the woods. So for me, it's a half-hour drive to get into Thornbury. My colleagues who live and work over in Windfall have the same kind of drive coming from that end. So what we can do is provide a missing piece of the spectrum of housing possibilities that are available for seniors. And the far end of it is the long-term care. We have the opportunity from the province to be able to actually house 160 beds, and that's vitally important because we have an aging long-term care facility.
So exists now. How many beds are there, I wonder?
It scales down and down. My father passed away there. He was there for his last 18 months of life, and during those 18 months, the beds were just not being replaced replaced
down. Okay.
because they still had rooms that were in foursomes as wards,
Right.
and we can't do that
The
with
world
the
has
best practice.
changed.
That's right.
Yes.
So it's vitally important we have that, but it's also important that we consider it as a whole campus of care.
Yep.
And this is a micro community. This is not seniors all in one enclave
Right.
away from everybody else. Right beside them, an attainable housing for 160 units of the healthcare workers.
Okay.
Because those are the ones who are coming to us and saying, I would gladly work here, but I can't find something that meets my professional income to live here. So they would come with their families.
And that's the challenge.
Yeah, so you could be
Yeah.
in a long-term facility out on a terrace watching the sidewalk in front of you with children playing. You know, that is really the essence.
I know. I look to the Scandinavian countries who seem to have done it so well
Yes.
with the types of communities that they've developed.
Yep.
That are mixed ages, mixed retired, non-retired,
Absolutely.
never worked grannies and grandpas.
That's
you know,
right.
That sort of thing.
That's right. And the mix is the key that you've mentioned
Yeah.
there. You know, I always hearken back to my husband's example. He showed me his first place in England that he ever purchased as a young homeowner.
Okay.
And it was a townhouse that had just one bedroom. It was just suitable for him. And then beside him was a 4-bedroom unit for a larger family. Beside that was an elderly couple. Maybe they're the grandparents of that family. That's the kind of thinking that we have to do.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I do want to just circle back one more piece of that puzzle too, is that we want to have a variety of housing above and beyond the long-term care on that campus of care,
Okay.
so that there could be some market bungalows which will help make it economically
Yeah.
feasible and sustainable, and then there could be a progressed level where you could go into retirement living or in co-living arrangements, something where you need a little extra support but not quite long-term care. We want to be able to provide that spectrum.
So is this a municipality project, or is this a developer that's come and said, I'd like to do something like this?
That's a really good point, because it's you know, people need to understand that this is not the taxpayer paying for all of this housing.
Okay.
We have an we had the sustainable thinking to secure that piece of land, thinking that it could benefit the community. But let's leave the building to the developers, because they're the ones that know how to do the building.
Okay.
And let's make sure that the long-term care is provided for by long-term care providers. And that's why no one could come to us and say that they would like to qualify as possibly getting this project on their own. So if a developer takes the lead, they have to be able to say, but I have somebody here who is an expert in long-term care facilities. So it has to be that kind of partnership within the private private groups that come, but
also a lot more work to do for council.
Yes, that's
and
right. Yeah.
Building department and planning department, and making sure that all the boxes are checked.
That's right, and our gateway project, and so it is coming into the village of Thornbury on the other side, but along Highway 26.
And for those who are sitting at home, so the campus of care is going to be to just past the new food land.
That's right. Yes, to the west side of Thornbury, and then
the
over to the east
old
side.
Food land.
That's right. Yeah. And,
Interesting.
And
okay.
It's not really the gateway of the town of Blue Mountains.
No.
It is
No.
the gateway into that particular community within our town of Blue Mountains. But there is an example too. So the experts there is the Attainable Housing Corporation.
Okay.
The Blue Mountains Attainable Housing Corporation.
Which already exists.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
So let's utilize that. We spent a long time in the last 4 years revitalizing that organization, so that they could assist when a developer says, okay, I'm ready to build, but I don't know how to manage these things. They step in and say, here's how we can make it work. Again, this is not the town. Our town staff will not be running attainable housing units.
But the nice thing is, you're still going to own the land underneath it, sort of like a condo?
Yeah, well, or
will you end up selling that to a developer?
So we can hand that over when the job
As
is
part
done.
of the job.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
So, so I think that's a good example of community sustainable thinking.
Yes.
It's not just how we solve the problem right now, but it's how do we solve it so that we have some sort of options for where people can live. And we've been talking largely on the senior side, but the attainable housing at the gateway is also going to accommodate the massive missing piece of the puzzle we have of no options, smaller units. Families are happy to live. I raised my kids in 1,200 square feet. They'd be happy to have that. That's right. If they have that opportunity. But if there's no choice, and I really, I don't want us to run out of time, but I want to be able to express that it's gone long beyond your favorite restaurant is closed 2 days a week because they can't find service staffs. The mayor and I have spoken to potential young doctors who come here and say, we love everything about this place, but my spouse and I cannot afford to live here. So that's how we need to fit them.
And the challenge is to the other end of the spectrum of the people who grew up here, went away to school but cannot afford to come back.
Exactly.
Unless you're going to go home and live with mom and dad.
Right, which is
still in the same house.
Happening more and more. We are a 4-generation household ourselves because that's the solution that we're able to do, but not all families have that ability to be able to choose to do that.
Sometimes the house has been sold.
So yes, exactly.
And there's not a home to go home to. They're now in a condo somewhere.
That's right. Yeah.
So it's interesting.
It is. It's a shame when we have young people in the community who have skills that we could be using, but they have to move elsewhere because they can't find something that meets their income.
But I think it's also the whole South Georgian Bay band.
Yes, absolutely. And that's why it's
important for us to think regionally.
important for us to
And I don't think we're alone in saying we don't have the workers, but we don't have the ability to attract within what the jobs can sustain them with.
Right.
So it's a challenge, but as you say, it's impacting restaurants, it's impacting the service industry, everywhere. I think we need a trade school too.
So,
because we've got a lot of building going on.
Well, we do, but we also have an excellent resource there with Georgian College. So, with Georgian College has an Owen Sound campus in Grey County. They have that here, and then both of my kids did. One did a degree, and then she went over to Georgian College, and my son went through for entrepreneurship. So, there are some excellent. I'm a former teacher, so it gets me excited when I see how well Georgian College is doing by providing those different avenues.
And again, you're lucky because you're sort of not quite equidistant between the two Georgian colleges.
Yes, that's right. That's
the
right.
one in Collingwood and the one in Owen Sound.
Yes, yeah. So
it's interesting.
So there are some opportunities there, and there's also speaking of trades as well as entrepreneurship. That's one of the ways in which we often talk about the tax dollars that go towards the county because that's
substantial.
Done in a piece of the pie always has to go to the county. One of the ways that we can bring that back and get our return on investment is to make the best use of the Grey County programs. And there are some top-notch entrepreneurial accelerator programs, et cetera, that are working and operating right there in Owen Sound, which, as you said, it's just a 40-minute drive. We can make use of that. We don't need to reinvent every wheel, each municipality working separately. That's the beauty of working together at the county level.
I think the key to municipalities succeeding is partnerships.
Yes. Yeah.
It's working with, as you say, there are no new wheels to invent.
Yes.
We're tailoring them to our
We're all trying to scratch our heads with the same problems.
And it's a challenge.
I think attainable housing is one of the ones where we can expand our options by working regionally. So I would look really forward to that should I be given the opportunity to step into the leadership role.
Right. Now, here's one I may not have warned you about. What skills are you bringing to leading the council?
Thank you. Well, thank you for asking that. I do bring experience with me because I am the Vice Chair of Grey Sauble Conservation Authority, which also has introduced me to many of my potential Grey County Council colleagues as well. I also sit on the board of Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority, so I'm familiar with some of my counterparts here in Simcoe County too because of the watershed division that we have. So I do have those particular items and other leadership. I'm the chair of Finance, Administration, and Legal Services for our Committee of the Whole, for example. Yes, I had to stop spell that one out. So I have taken leadership roles on council and demonstrated, you asked what skill, demonstrated my ability to work as a collaborative leader. So I have a background in collaborative leadership. It goes part with my master's studies focusing on community studies. So I have brought that traditional background in, but I've demonstrated it by the way that I run my sections of council meetings. And I can promise that to the future council that we will have the same kind of operating together where we will listen twice as much as we speak.
That's a pretty good objective for a politician. We only have a couple of minutes left. If you're speaking to the person sitting at home on the sofa, what would you like them to know about you?
Know about me, I have been in this area for 22 years, and it was an empty property when we first came to the town of Blue Mountains, so I raised my kids and taught at Collingwood Collegiate, so I have local experience here, and I've seen what's happened over the last 2 decades, and I've seen it through the eyes of not just myself. When I come home at night, there's where I see my reason why I'm running. I come home to my 81-year-old mother and the needs that she has. I come home to my son and his young family, and I'm thinking about what kind of town of the Blue Mountains are we creating today, but also for that grandson of mine. What is it going to be like for him? What are his options going to be like? So that's what I share with members who are sitting out there, is that I have that perspective. I understand the needs of our seniors as well as our younger families, and I'd really like to be able to work on a sustainable model together with the community to make sure that that happens. All ages and stages of life is what I ran on 4 years ago.
Ages and stages.
And I'm running again on the same desire to make sure that we have a town of Blue Mountains that is a home for all ages and stages of life.
Interesting. That everybody wants to not only move to, but stay there.
Yes, exactly. To have options.
And to have options. 30 seconds. Challenge in Collingwood is the water in the development. Do you have enough water in the town of Blue Mountains?
We do have enough water, but we do have to continue to work on keeping up our maintenance, our sustainable outlook on our infrastructure systems. So that'll be a big project. That's one of the ones at the top of the list that we'll have to keep working responsibly on and make sure that we can make use of the progress we've made in these last 4 years and move forward. We've got to keep that momentum going.
Got to keep going forward. That's probably the best. Never look back.
Yeah.
Learn the lessons.
That's right. And make use of the work that's been done in the community over the last 4 years.
Okay. Andrea, thank you very much, and good luck with the election results on October 24th.
Great. Thank you very much for having me.
We'll be back in a couple of minutes, and I'll wrap it up.
I will put my trust. Hi, I'm Micah Denbach. Join us on Rogers TV and on Facebook and on YouTube at Clearview Community Church for all of our content. Thank you, and I hope you guys have a great day.
Do you worry about how much someone drinks?
Do you feel angry or depressed most of the time? Do you feel neglected or unloved?
Do you feel that if the drinker loved you, she or he would stop drinking?
If you answered yes to any of these questions, you are not alone.
Not everyone trapped by alcohol is an alcoholic.
Families and friends are suffering too. Al-Anon and Alateen can help. Call 1-866-200-0223 or visit alanon.org/help.
Focus better.
Heal better.
Sleep better.
Partner better.
Create better. Love better.
Breathe better.
Learn better.
Laugh better. Lead better.
Think better. Work better. Friend better. Unwind better.
Happy better. Everything gets better when you get active.
Focus better.
Partner better.
Sleep better.
Breathe better.
Love better. Work better. Friend better. Unwind better.
Everything gets better when you get active.
Welcome back. The one thing I haven't said through this entire program is October 24th is the very last day you can vote in the town of Blue Mountains. You can vote by internet, you can vote by telephone, and you have just listened to 3 of the mayoral candidates, Elizabeth Marshall, Tony Poole, and Andrea Matrosovs. Unfortunately, Joe Hallows could not join us, so you'll have to seek him out yourself to see his platform and what he wishes to do for the town of Blue Mountains. But I am the person who says everybody should vote or you can't complain about the next council. So remember, you should have your code by now in order to vote, and if not, drop into the town hall and they can help you any day up until the 24th. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.
call the Rogers TV Viewer Response Line, email us, or connect with us on social media.